Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Talk Openly. My name is Jack, and I'm here with my lovely friend Daniel, Sangha friend at Lions Road Dharma Center. Hey, Daniel, how's it going?
Hey Jack, happy to be with you. Hi everybody out
Yeah.
there in Talk Openly land.
Tonight, Daniel, we're going to be talking about the concept of faith.
Because you gotta
And
have faith.
that's right, you do. And Buddhism, it's a little different from maybe other traditions that we're familiar with. And so yeah, it'll be fun to explore that a little bit with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah.
I could use some enlightenment when it comes to faith.
I could use some faith right now in general, huh?
Yeah. Oh, let's work on it. All right, we're gonna at the end of this show, we will have greater faith than when we arrived.
Okay,
Or at
I
least we'll
think
have
that's possible.
we'll be leading towards greater faith than when we
I
arrived.
think that's super possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the tendency when I talk with you is that I leave our conversation feeling uplifted and looking forward to more Dharma practice. So,
And you know what I think is so great about that? Because even though you and I are exceptionally wonderful human beings who support each other and care about each other and all of that, all the good things,
yeah,
I think that the reason why we both feel that way consistently after these shows is because we're talking about the Dharma, right?
yeah,
And the more that we sort of um, shed some light on it with each other, right? And talk about our practices and explore it, the good things come out of it. And I think that's sort of how we generate some faith. So that's that's the way I see the relationship between what we're doing here and all the goodness that comes out of it for us too and for anyone who's listening, right?
yeah. No, I really, that's a great way to put it is, yeah, kind of immersing ourselves in the Dharma for an hour. It's good
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Can't go
Yeah.
wrong with that.
No, you really can't. Well, and I think that's what the conversation tonight will touch on too, right? Is that like when you really examine the Dharma for yourself, there's a lot of faith that comes from that. So,
And it's the
yeah,
only way
let's do.
to, yeah, it's the right kind of faith is when you're
Right.
examining it for yourself.
That's right. Yeah. Sweet. Okay, so we're gonna do
Yeah.
it tonight, second half
We
of our show.
are. We are.
Yeah.
Well, but what about you, Jack? How's life? How's your training? How's your practice? How's all of that good stuff coming along?
Uh, good, fine. Um, I'm a little on edge.
Oh.
As you may know, we have a new president. He's not new in some ways, but he's really coming out forceful, huh?
Mhm.
In his first day or two. And so definitely feeling on edge about that, feeling on edge about the people he's surrounded by. Um, but yeah, also just trying to remind myself that things can change and also that like not all of this is going to happen all at once. And so there's ways that there can be interventions and so on and so forth. Um, but yeah, I mean, like the slow creep of fascism feels to be getting much faster.
I was
And
gonna
so
say
maybe
that
that's,
it's nothing slow about it, Jack.
yeah, yeah, it's no longer slow. It's pretty rapid. We've got people sig heiling, and all those things. So not very good in that sense.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. You know,
Feels,
I had that feeling yesterday where
yeah,
I was sort of like sitting there sort of not doom scrolling. I was refreshing, or yeah, like what's next? What's next? And I was like each time refreshing, there's something worse and something
I
worse.
know.
And I was like I was actually like kind of getting a little nauseated, where I
Yeah,
was just like my head's kind of spinning like holy crap. Like wait, this just started. Like it
it
just
just started.
like, yeah, okay, we can, of course, it's been coming for a long time, right? But like this new phase, this, all of all the new rules, all the shifts in our government, and the new sort of new paradigm, if you will.
Yeah.
It's it's hard to keep track of it all, and it's sort of sickening to think about the consequences of all of these rapid changes and decisions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a blitzkrieg of, you know, like just people keep people shocked and scared and all of that.
Well, what do you do? What are you, how are you, I understand why being on edge, and what are you doing with that?
I mean, I'm just doing what I do, right? Which is like, for one, I don't stray from my training. That would be that would be really really bad right now. I don't think I'd be a very stable. So that's, you know, essential. But also just like continuing to do the work that I do. You know, I'm really fortunate that my lifestyle is such that I am, you know, I'm supporting people in um, shifting their thinking about themselves and other people in the world. And that's like, I'm really grateful that I can do that on a daily basis. You know, I think I'm fortunate to be able to create that kind of merit, you know? And so like having faith, right? Having faith that that is doing something. You know, part of me, I have like a kind of cynical part that is very like, um, much like, oh, it's not enough to do like, you know, individual transformation. Like you gotta do structural, we gotta like, you know, we gotta change it from like the structural level. And so then that feels kind of disempowering, right?
Of
Because
course.
it's like, well, what am I gonna do? Like, yeah, I can protest and I'm gonna protest, but sorry, my cat just opened my door and then decided to not come in because he's because he's my
Yeah.
cat.
Hi,
Um,
James.
Hi James, we love you. Um, but yeah, so I have to remember that like what I'm doing does matter. And it does have a ripple effect. And I think people being able to heal trauma, um, and yeah, come to a more grounded place in their minds, like that definitely affects the world, right? Um, so yeah, I have to be careful not to get into that really cynical
Yeah.
space. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
How about
right. I mean,
yourself? Yeah.
you're right about that aspect of it, right? That we have to have some confidence in that ripple effect.
Hmm.
And even though our aspirations are really quite great, um, the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of forces at play in the world that we have no control over.
Right.
And so the best thing we can do is to A, be stable and grounded ourselves so that we can be in a position to help others like that's what you're saying, right? Regardless of what happens, administrations come and go, governments come and go, all kinds of sort of worldly affairs are changing all the time, sometimes in really big ways and sometimes in really drastic, harmful ways, right? We're not
Hmm.
we're not putting on some kind of rose-colored glasses and saying like, oh, everything's gonna be okay, it's gonna be fine, because it may not. It could
Right.
not be, right? And it could be very not okay for many people. And so, to the best of our ability, if we have tools in our tool set, if we're able to be a resource for others, right, and then be able to continually replenish our resources, right, then
Hmm. Hmm.
we're in the best position we possibly can be, and that's the most empowered you could possibly be.
For sure. Yeah, and I'm thinking about, you know, people in the middle of disasters and like when you look for the people who are helping, right? Like that is so important. And so, you know, like my family's down in LA and everyone's good. They, you know, nobody's house burned down. They're not in the areas that um were affected in that way. But I've been really following those stories and just seeing like the ways that people come together
Yeah.
as communities and after like the kind of, you know, 24-hour news cycle passes on them, right? And people are still, you know, meeting in the streets and giving each other food and
Yeah.
comfort and shelter and um that I have to remind myself of those things too. It's that like there is so much human goodness, and just because it might not be what is like on the screen, right, doesn't mean that it's not happening. And I think that's more common than not, actually.
Yeah, and the weird I agree with everything that you said, and then sort of on a deeper level, we are reminded that that basic human goodness is there regardless of people's political ideologies and
Right.
what they believe is right and wrong, like that fundamental sort of goodness is something that every human being has. The
Hmm.
distortions, right? The barriers to that goodness are many, but I think it's really important to remember that like it's so easy to get divided, right? And so to feel like alienated from people that we who are actually out to harm, right? Like are deliberately out to harm, maybe not even unintentionally, right? Like it's so hard, I think, to remember that actually like we could have a heart-to-heart connection with them as well, right? Like I don't know how
Hmm.
many people I've met in real life with whom I disagree vehemently, right? About the way things are and where they're going and the right way to resolve issues and stuff like that. But what in each one of those cases, we might have a total disagreement, and yet we actually are striving for the same thing. We want goodness, we want, happiness for ourselves, we want some security, we want, whatever. And so, our mechanisms, our methods of trying to get there are quite different and
Hmm.
oftentimes lead to a lot of harmful conflict. But I'm hoping that I'm a bit of an accelerationist when it comes to technology. So
Hmm.
a lot of people, who know me know that I'm into technology. I like
Hmm.
gadgets and I like newfangled things. But I'm not sort of I don't I'm not sort of like thinking like it's all good, right? I
Yeah,
see I
totally.
see how technology, swords cut at, both ways, right? Like it can be helpful or it can be harmful. But I'm a bit of an accelerationist now with all of this modern technology because my sense is that I really want people to just get like done with it, just sick of it, right? Where they're
Just
like,
sick of it.
Just sick, just I don't care, TikTok, Facebook, it doesn't matter. I don't want any of it. I'm gonna go outside. I'm gonna touch some grass. I'm gonna go meet my neighbor. You know,
Gosh, I hope so.
wouldn't that be
Yeah.
wouldn't that be a wonderful outcome of all of this nonsense? If, there
Yes.
was actually greater sort of community and more people going outside and coming in contact with sort of ordinary reality. That'd be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. No, um that would be an interesting outcome. I
Yeah.
hope that happens. Yeah, I do see that with like younger people that I meet
Yeah.
with, right? Is like so much of their lives are online. And there
Oh
is this sense of kind of disconnect, right?
yeah. Hmm.
Um in general. And I heard this new term called cute meet, where it's like where people meet their partner in person rather than online, and that's considered cute. So it's called a
Oh.
cute meet.
Okay. Okay.
So it's just, yeah, it's funny how like, yeah, how different that generation's world is,
Oh.
right? But
Oh.
I really, yeah, I hope that we can get more connected back to our earth, because um
Probably,
we need
I
to.
think if the past is any indicator, it will lead to some people doing that and other people going the other direction and not and going,
Right,
putting the pedal to the metal and going
right.
full steam into more technology, more
Totally.
virtual worlds. Yeah.
That's the funny thing, is that it's so not linear, like we're constantly spiraling out in so many different directions. And
Absolutely. And those
yeah,
things are all because of the interconnected nature of things.
right.
There are all these unintended consequences, right? So, like we won't go into it like deeply, but there's a sort of a perennial optimist in me, who hopes for like, okay, so all this stuff looks really, really bad, but at the same time, in order to make global changes, decisive singular sort of authority might be needed, or something
Mm,
like that, right? Where it's like, okay, on the one hand, yeah, bad for so many reasons because concentrated power can is corrupted and da 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 da. Yes to all of that,
mm,
but also possibly maybe we can save ourselves and the planet from, or life from
mm,
extinction. That'd be nice.
hmm.
See, that's what
I
I'm
had
saying,
that
like a
one.
perennial optimist. I mean, it can go either way, but I just sort of
Yeah.
choose to hope for the best.
And yeah, the one time that I had that thought that like, oh, maybe authoritarianism could work here is like with COVID vaccines, where I was like, just freaking just stab everyone, like do
Yeah.
it. Like, it doesn't
Right.
matter what they say, don't let them, like revoke consent.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, no, we
No.
can't do that.
No, it remains to be seen.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Well, how are you, buddy? What's your world been like? What's your training like?
I'm pretty good. I'm diligently bumping up the amount of like time that I'm meditating.
Good for you.
I was having I was having darshan with Lama, and he's never told me to meditate more, never, not
Mm,
once, you know. And he was like, well, in order to, kind of like whatever, like in order to sort of progress here, you're gonna want to bump that up just a little bit,
mm,
And so I've been doing that, and uh, it's a weird time is such a strange thing, like I think it's so weird how I can, go into meditation and feel like it's minutes and then it's ding, it's over. Other times I think it's almost over and it's only been a few minutes. Like
hmm.
meditation is like a weird sort of like time warp, for me.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of interesting. I am super distracted lately, like I sort of like my old dreamlike sort of patterns or whatever of thinking are still there. They, it does all, calm quiet down, right? There is a
Mm,
decent amount of sort of stillness and clarity that does show up, but it's with there's a lot of chatter, a lot of noise in there.
yeah. Same here. Yeah, you're not alone.
No, that's all right. It's okay. That's what's
Yeah.
happening. At least I'm aware of it and I'm watching it.
Yeah. What antidotes have been helpful lately, if any?
Mm, mm. Primarily, so one of the areas I think I've talked about this before, but like, it's not so much an antidote, maybe it's an antidote, but correcting my posture, ever so
Mm-hmm.
slightly, like, I tend to sort of slouch a little bit forward, and when I do, I'll notice it actually first in my breath, and then I'll notice, oh, right, actually, the breath and the mind, they're kind of like there's like a connection there where like if my breath is sort of like shallow or is not as deep, it's a little bit more kind of up in my chest, right? And then I
Mm,
notice that there's more sort of like chatter, if you will. And then if
mm,
I modify my posture and I'm able to get my breath, back into nice deep, diaphragmatic breathing, then the thoughts sort of calm down as well. So that's been
yeah.
cool. And also, a lot of times just reminding myself of my intention, like what it is that I'm doing there. I've been trying to do that at the beginning of my practice more, like I've always done it, but more like intentionally examining my
Yeah.
intentions. Like I guess one way to phrase it is like, so okay. So there's like, all right, we want to develop some bodhicitta, right? So we're like, all sentient beings, and okay, great, great, this is nice, right? But then there's this other aspect to it that's been kind of coming up lately for me, which is, what are you doing, and what do you actually want, right? Like that's nice, that's a nice aspiration, and it's good, like nothing wrong with it, good to move there, but like, why are you doing this, and what do you actually want from all of this?
Yeah.
And that part's really interesting because we have to be honest with ourselves, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not, and that part has been really the question, the way that questioning leads me to sort of examine my relationship with the Dharma and my practice and how it influences my actions and my behavior in ordinary life. Like I see sometimes this sort of like there's kind of like a there's this holding on, there's this attachment where I'm like, yeah, I know the right, like I'm aware of what's going on here. I
Mm,
can kind of see maybe I'm not being super skillful, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it anyway, right? Whatever,
totally.
or
Yeah,
not do it, or whatever the case might be, and then and that sort of provokes or prompts this question, like what, like if like that this particular practice leads to this kind of result, that, right? Why is it that you're not doing it? Well,
totally.
maybe I don't actually want the result, right? Or I don't want to give up the whatever it is that that would lead to that result, right? So it's this
Yeah,
weird sort of thing, but really trying to be radically honest with myself about what I'm doing, and rather than trying to be like formulaic about it.
totally.
Like I love, the prayers, I love mantras, I love all of that stuff, right? But also I have to talk to myself and be like, why are you here? What are you doing?
Yeah. Can I ask, like, has your mind given you any answers?
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of interesting actually. It's revealed that there's a decent amount of uh just sort of ordinary wanting to be okay.
Sure.
Just
Yeah.
like there is that sort of like just that basic, like we've talked about before, where it's like, no, I there's this part of me that really just kind of wants to get along well with myself and with other people, and be
Yeah.
comfortable in this world, right? There's that. And then the other part that I think one of the things that was kind of a big one for me recently was um that upon reflection, I realized I want something else, right? Like I want, I really like, why is it like, what was my whole progress, in coming to it, and why am I still here? A lot of it has to do with like not wanting what is and wanting something that's different. And then before,
Yeah.
like we talked about, I had a lot of magical thinking around this and sort of all kinds of misconceptions, and I like played in this sort of fantasy world about what Buddhism is and what practice is. Then I had sort of like a come to Jesus moment,
Yeah.
like it's not what it is, not what you think it is, right? And so then but realizing that actually deep down that longing for something else was in fact it is in fact a longing for transformation, right?
Yeah.
It started as longing for escape,
Hmm.
something else completely different, not this ordinary world of humans and bodies and people's crazy thoughts and weird political ideologies and all of that. I want something else, right? But
Hmm.
it's not like that anymore. Now I recognize that actually, if I was living in harmony with reality as it is, this would be a pretty, be a fine place. It is a fine place,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, um, yeah, that resonates with me for sure. When I ask myself that question, I think now it's like, I want to be free. Like I really like that is what first comes to
Yeah,
me is like I want to be free.
that's right.
Um, and like then if I kind of like sit with that for a little bit, it does eventually like I can spread it out. It's not the first thing that comes to mind. But I do kind of see like, okay, but for me to be free, like other people need to be free, other beings need to be free. um but that process takes a little bit of
Yeah,
like conceptualizing
it
it,
does.
whereas like right now my first thought with that is I want to be free.
Right.
Like there's this
Yeah.
kind of like relief that comes with it and thinking about that. So yeah, maybe I'm kind of like I'm like middle scope Lam Rim right
Yeah,
now,
right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean there. I'll tell you one more funny thing that did show up. Maybe it's not so funny,
Mm,
but another thing that has shown up, which I realized I was like, oh, I want to be viewed as a wise person. Not suggesting I would like to be a wise person. That's true. but there's this
Uh-huh.
other weird sort of component to it where I want to be viewed as a wise,
Totally.
right? And it's weird, like when I, like occasionally friends or people that I'm engaged with will make some kind of a comment, like, that really sort of inflates that part of my ego. And I'm like, that's right, because I'm like a sage. I meditate. I'm Buddhist. I know things about Vajrayana practice. And
Uh-huh.
like there's something weird thing like that that's like in there, like where I'm like, yes. And then and when I really asked myself, I was like, oh shit. Yeah, dude. Like you totally want some kind of recognition from other people,
Yeah.
that you're so wise and that you are so helpful and all of that. And then I have to laugh because I realize, because I'm familiar enough with the training that I'm like, it might not be good to expect praise, right?
Right. Right. Yes. Don't expect applause, huh?
Don't expect applause, right? And then it's a night, it's actually deeply refreshing to have these
Yeah.
kinds of honest conversations with ourselves because if we can't be naked and vulnerable and truthful, honest with ourselves about ourselves, like that's the only place to start with all of that kind of practice. And
Right.
there is something kind of refreshing about it, where you're just like, like that's freedom, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
here I am. Look at this.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. It's not like lurking in the background anymore, right?
No,
Kind of like,
no.
yeah, in the shadows.
And it's
Yeah.
not shameful. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not
Right.
ashamed that I'm still attracted to the eight worldly concerns and still heavily engaged with them, right? I recognize that of course I am, because that's where I'm at on the path, right?
Yeah.
Like, I,
That's such an important reminder is like not to when you recognize it, don't shame yourself. Just I mean, even like I feel like when a little bit of humor can arise, right? Where it's like, oh, there you are again.
that's it. That's it.
Then that can be
Yeah.
really helpful.
Yeah, you get a good little chuckle. You catch yourself, you see yourself, and you're like, oh, that's cute. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't actually realize how much that, whatever it is, was driving the show, right?
Yeah.
Like it's operating in the background, right? So, like, bring it into the light, look at it and be like, hey, hi, what you doing,
Yeah.
buddy?
Hey, little buddy.
What you doing? Yeah,
That's really funny. Yeah, good. Well, speaking of not expecting applause,
yeah,
that's a classic Lojong slogan. And I think
indeed it is.
we need to practice some Lojong, huh?
Let's do it.
Sweet.
Mm. Oh,
The
yeah.
random Lojong slogan generator is on Lions Roar Dharma Center's website, and it's fantastic. Um, and wow, we got the first one.
Wow.
Cool. I don't know if we've actually gotten the first one on here, but it says first, train in the preliminaries. And so the preliminaries, Tibetan Nondro referred to, are to meditate on your precious human rebirth, impermanence and death, the unsatisfactory nature of cyclic existence, and the inescapable results of cause and effect, karma. So these are the four preliminaries, essentials for the training for the path of Lam Rim. If there's no faith in these, right? I don't know if the practice is gonna be very effective.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I'm pretty sure that most people, I thought I heard Lama say at some point that when people stop practicing completely and just bow out, it's usually because they're not actually meditating on these.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
also, I thought it was kind of interesting. I was looking through some notes from, Lama Jinpa's various talks, and I was looking, hunting for information and quotes and things related to faith on the path. And I thought one point kind of stood out to me. Somebody had asked him, like, hey, all these like deities and all these beings, that's what all these beings, do you really believe in them? And he was like, absolutely, 100% without a doubt. Do you? And then they're like, no, I sure don't. And he was like, great, because you don't have to believe in the entire cosmology in order for this to work, right? Like you don't have to like you don't have to accept the entire worldview, right?
Mhm.
That's fine because his point was that there's all kinds of weird and wacky things in this universe, and many of them are not helpful to you in any way, right? To know them or not know them, whether there are gods or are not gods, not going to help you, actually.
Yeah.
He said what you
Yeah.
need to have faith in is karma.
Right.
And I think
Right.
that points to all four of these, right? Like, there should be some analysis within context of the results of cause and effect related to our human birth, impermanence and death, and cyclic existence.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, check this out. So who's this here? Oh,
This
I
is
can't see.
just it just says it's a mandala.
Mandala.
We
Very
don't know.
cool.
It looks like some kind of a like a tapestry. It's a panel, embroidered panel.
Sweet.
I wish I could have seen that when it was like fresh, full color.
Right? Oh, yeah, that would be so
It
cool.
looks kind of muted right now. Huh.
You know, for the four preliminaries, those are really good kind of antidotes in meditation, especially for distraction. But I think also probably laxity too, right? Because it can be motivating. But the ones that are really helpful for me when I'm very distracted are impermanence, right? So just thinking like, okay, all these things that I'm ruminating on, they're not going to last. Like they're really not that interesting. Like if I really
Right.
look at their nature, like they're going to be gone in just seconds. They're dust, right?
No.
And I can't hold on to them. Any pleasure that I get from them is gone. And so that can help kind of bring uh the distraction down. Though I have to be careful not to go too far into the analysis, otherwise I'm not doing shamatha. But then the other one that's very helpful for me in those moments are looking at cause and effect.
Yeah.
So what kind of mind am I cultivating right
Right.
now? What kind of mind do I want to be cultivating? Because I'm creating the seeds in this very
Right. Which
moment.
seeds am I planting? Which ones am I nourishing? Right.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And there is like the seed of, I think, intention, right? Where it's like, yeah, through my shamatha, I am intending my mind towards, positive virtue and whatnot. And so that's good in itself, but am I actually applying myself when I'm there? So yeah, cool, cool.
That's good. Good
Preliminaries.
advice. I will, if I can remember to do it next time I'm distracted, I will just remember. Jack says the preliminaries are a good one.
Well, and if you're struggling with laxity, I think Precious Human Rebirth can be really helpful for that, where it's kind of like energizing, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm here, like I've got everything that I need to practice on the path. Like, let's do this, rather than kind of like that slumping a little bit into
Hmm.
sleepiness or laziness.
Yeah.
It can be motivating. So
Thanks, Jack.
yeah, totally.
A
Um,
little pro tip.
a little pro tip right there from Lama Jimpa. I can't claim it. Um, so great segue right into tonight's topic of faith, looking at the four preliminaries. Because as you said, Lama really um, highlights those as foundational for, kind of maintaining one's practice and one's training. And part of that, I think, is that the more that we immerse our minds in those preliminaries, the more faith we have in them, the more conviction that, oh, this is legitimate.
Yeah.
And so tonight we're talking a little bit about faith and the type of faith that Buddhism really encourages and that Shakyamuni Buddha encouraged. So I'm wondering, Daniel, what's like kind of the first thing you think of when you hear the word faith?
Well, so I had a fundamental Christian religious upbringing, as you know,
Nice.
and it was drilled into our heads a definition of faith
Hmm.
that wasn't particularly helpful. And the
Mhm.
definition of faith came out of, I think it was the Apostle Paul's writings, and it was faith is the assured expectation of things hoped for, right?
Break it down, break it down.
Yeah, so just that you believe that the thing that you hope for is in fact coming, right?
Uh,
And so there, within that context, it was, faith that the end of the world is nigh, and that, that you, if you remain righteous and true and do what you were told to do in just the right way, then you would survive and whatever, live in paradise, and you just had to believe that that was the truth, and then it would be the truth, right?
yeah.
And so that's a common type of faith. And I think that like we really do have to be clear about what we mean about faith when we're talking about it within the context of Buddhism, because it's very, very different from what people who are religiously minded usually consider faith, right? So like uh, like people are like, oh, I same faith as my parents, right? They're just talking about like I'm part of the same religious organization, right?
Sure.
Like, it's not the kind of faith we're talking about, right? Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
not it, right? Or that, like, I heard a Tibetan teacher talk about this sort of what is referred to in Tibetan as the wish fulfilling jewel, which is,
Mm-hmm.
and what they meant by that traditionally was like a genie in a bottle. All you have
Mm.
to do is like supplicate this gem, this precious jewel, and anything that you want, you can have. And if you don't get it, it's just because you didn't have enough faith. You didn't believe it.
Mm.
And we see touches of that within sort of new agey stuff related to like manifestation and things like that.
Sure, yeah.
I do believe in the power of setting intention and doing all kinds of rituals and stuff to sort of highlight that and make it very clear to you, and that there's some results that might come from it. But this sort of like magical faith in something, or hope, just if I hope enough, if I believe enough, then it'll be true. Like that's not helpful. I
Yeah.
spent most of my life with that kind of faith. And
Right.
but so what I started off as the kind of faith where it was like, yeah, I believe, this is my religion and they tell me it's true and therefore it has to be true. When I left that, then the magical thinking sort of took over, both
Mm.
my own knowledge took over, right? And my
Mm.
knowingness, all kinds of stuff like that. But that's not at all what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, it's not that faith kind of by like conviction. Like I'll dig in my heels and I just believe it. We're really talking about faith through experience and faith through experiment. Um,
Intelligent faith.
Intelligent faith. Yes, that is something that really, really attracted me to the Dharma as I was first coming to the temple. Is that I don't think I ever felt like anyone was pressuring me to believe, right? There was a sense that like, hey, this is great for me, and come check it out, like see what you think. Um, but it was very much kind of left open for me to explore. And there's a story, a tale of Shakyamuni Buddha talking about the way that he wants students to learn the Dharma, and that's by almost testing it as like a goldsmith would test gold, to see if it was real, right? And that's like by examining it, by burning it, by really, really taking it apart, and seeing for sure if this is really the gold, if this is really the truth, right? And so what that looks like and what I've kind of experienced in my own training is like, okay, I'm going to kind of look at this one uh like teaching, and then I'm going to try and see if when I try and practice it, what happens, right? And a big one for me, like I'll just give you a little example, um, that has really helped transform my mind. is just practicing believing and seeing in everyone that there's Buddha nature, right? That every being has Buddha nature. And that can feel like when I first learned that, right? I was like, like I don't think Trump has Buddha nature. I don't think rapists have Buddha nature. There's these kind of biases that I have around people. But when I started just kind of like looking at that, and looking at okay, how does one get away from Buddha nature? Like, what does kind of unethical conduct over like a period of time do to someone? Like, well, of course they're going to end up with confused ideas that are different from their original nature. So kind of looking at like in my own life too, like where have I turned away from my own Buddha nature? Does that mean that I don't have it anymore just because of, some mistakes? And so it's kind of like this analysis that you do. And then also just the kind of experiment of like, okay, what if I just like imagined, right, that everyone has Buddha nature? What does that do for me? What does that do for my mind? And it completely transforms my mind
Correct.
when I can really steep myself in that.
Right.
And so it's a little bit of this like kind of meta practice of like having faith and seeing if that develops my faith, right? Like having faith that okay, I'm just going to try and see like what if I just imagine that everyone has Buddha nature, what happens to me? And it's like, oh yeah, I feel compassion just totally open up in my heart, right? I feel love, I feel joy, I feel excited, right? That it's like, oh, things are possible and like change is possible, because I think I'm sorry, I'm kind of going off on
No.
tangents, but I think sometimes what happens when I'm not like kind of really actively applying the Dharma is that I get kind of stuck in these like rigid black and white ways of thinking where I'm like, okay, this is all looking real bad, like this world right now
Yeah.
is bad and it's just going to stay bad. And it's like when we think about like, okay, well, if all beings have Buddha nature and impermanence is real, right? Then things can change for the better too. Like they don't have to just stay bad. I mean, people are gonna have to make like we're gonna have to make a lot of changes, right? For us to see change like in our kind of everyday world. But just, that there is that possibility, that very real, like it's not just imaginary, it's a very real possibility because I've seen how it changes me, how it's changed
Yeah.
me. So yeah, it's that just kind of like direct experience of test it out, see what happens when you like really try on the Dharma.
You're so empirical. You're like a Buddha scientist.
Yeah, you gotta be. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's interesting. My sense is that when the Dharma is approached like that, like what you're saying, where you bring it on and you intentionally test it, you
Hmm.
examine, you're like, okay, so it says if ABC, then whatever over here, then and you check it out and it leads to exactly what it said it would, then you're like, yep, all right, that works, right? And I
Hmm.
love that, and that leads to a real solid foundation. That's where faith becomes sort of the foundation for everything else, right? So it's sort of like that old saying about building your house on like a solid foundation rather than on the beach or something. In my
Mm.
own experience, because I didn't approach it that way, right? I came in with blind faith,
Hmm.
fantastical faith. I developed all kinds of faith and all kinds of misconceptions, right? And the interesting thing about it is that if you have conviction, even if it's in a mistake, right, a mistaken view, you can accomplish all kinds of things with it. Not necessarily good things, but all kinds of things can happen. The result of it, though, was this, it's a lot more shakable, right? So that faith
Yes.
I've had to undergo, I think, multiple sort of crisis of faith, right? And where I have to really ex I am forced to because it didn't quite work out the way that I thought it would, or was, or it wasn't what I thought it was, or whatever. There's this sort of this letdown, and then I question the whole thing, and then and that's it's helpful in its own right because again, I'm
Totally.
questioning it. I'm still practicing, right? And so I can still see the results and I can see this there's a, disparity between the way that I am and the way I wish I was and all of that, right? And between what I think I know and the way things are. And that's helpful, but I think that, the approach that you are suggesting is more in line with the Buddha's teachings and will give rise to great confidence and unshakable faith. Because it
Mm-hmm.
is, like, of course, our faith grows with insight. Of course it does. And with a direct experience, when, like, that's what you're saying, when you see it and you see the transformation that happens, you can't argue with it because it's your own direct experience of it. But until
Right.
you have your own direct experience, you have to rely on something else, right? Like, so there's nothing wrong with it. Like I used to be kind of like, if I can't see it, if I can't touch it, if I can't smell it, I don't believe it, kind of
Mm-hmm.
nonsense, right? But no, that's not true. Actually, I believe all kinds of things and I have great faith. A lot of, I trust in many things based upon just people that I trust saying it, right? And
Yeah.
suggesting that it's so. And so I find it really helpful when I can rely on teachers
Right.
because so for example Lama Jimpa, right? I I've had many experiences with him. I trust who he is and how he is, and I like what I see. I'm like, wow, this really is an amazing being, right? And he's practicing these things. He's teaching along these lines, right? And every time I go in and I have some kind of misconception, or I think he's going to say this, or he's going to be dogmatic about that, it's never like
Mm-hmm.
that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, no, this person is my spiritual friend, right? I can trust them. And so when I hear something that doesn't quite jive with what I'm thinking, right, then that's a great opportunity for practice, right? And
Hmm.
I think that it points to something really, really, really important. We think that doubt is incompatible with faith, but
Hmm.
doubt is instrumental in faith, right?
Hmm.
So on the Buddhist path, we welcome doubt. It's okay. If you don't have doubt, that's blind faith,
Hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to get past that and in fact have your questions, have your doubt,
Yeah.
have your strong beliefs that it's wrong. It's okay. And the great news is that if you have Sangha, then that's the place to bring it all, right? If
Right.
I
Right.
wanted to, I could tell you right now, if this was true, it's not, but Jack, I don't believe in reincarnation. I don't think the Buddha ever existed, and this is just some convenient little story that we're telling ourselves. I can say that to you, and I will not be excommunicated. You won't
Right.
stop talking to
Right.
me. You'll
Yeah.
explore it with me. You'll
Right.
honestly look at it and be like, well, let's look at that. Let's talk about it, right? Here's my experience. This is my, this is what's going for me. And through that
Mm-hmm.
interchange, by safely being able to express our doubts in a supportive environment and without any fears, right? Then we can really examine them from other people's perspectives, and that helps us a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is, doubt is an interesting topic, right? Because I think, there's ways where doubt can be corrosive,
Oh,
like
yeah.
if we stay there, right? But yeah, having that interest in kind of wanting to find out, right? Like I think that
Right.
kind of doubt is important, right?
No,
Like,
no, I think I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to say all of them are important as long as you don't stop with the curiosity, right? Because the
mm,
truth will, if you keep pushing, right, then great. The problem is we'll have a doubt, some kind of something, and then we'll have faith in our misunderstanding,
in the doubt, yeah, in the
right? In the doubt
misunderstanding, yeah.
itself without truly, so faith is a way of kind of like stopping there. We don't have to really go much further, right? Because if you know something beyond a shadow of a doubt, you have great confidence and great faith in it, you're no longer sort of questioning it, right?
Mm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, maybe we can talk more about doubt sometime. I know we have talked about it, but I'd be curious to see where we're at with doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the different forms of doubt for sure.
Yeah, 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 no
Yeah, that'd
doubt.
be interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and how do you think like faith from experience, uh how can that be like a motivating factor in, training and kind of joyous effort and continuing this what otherwise is like a really challenging
Yeah.
thing to
It's the
do,
only
right?
thing, faith is really the only thing that has, it's the glue that binds my that connects my interruptions. My, so
Huh.
like, I'm going
I like that.
along and then I have some kind of something where I'm like, this isn't going the way I want. I'm not comfortable. And this is, I've got my mind's on fire and people are unhappy, whatever, like I might have something happens, shit breaks loose, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm unhappy about it all, right? And then I'll think, well, maybe I shouldn't even be doing all of this. This is nonsense, right? And then I just actually just sort of like look at it. I'm like, well, my own direct experience reveals this, right? And then then I'll remember things and I'll remember like I'll be like, "Oh, right. Actually, the suffering that I'm experiencing right now is in fact samsaric, right? There isn't as far as
Mm-hmm.
I have yet to experience dharmic suffering. But I have experienced a lot of samsaric suffering. And so a lot of times these moments like they're great, right? They're an opportunity for reflection and the faith, this indirect experience where I'm like, no, I know. I've practiced enough. I can see that I have never been lied to, right?
Mm-hmm.
That my misunderstandings came from myself, right? Like that's how, my confusions and doubts and stuff arose. I can see that. And then I can just sort of like, okay, I'm gonna keep going, right? And
Yeah.
that's what I was telling Lama the other day. I was like, man, I really do feel like I'm sort of at that point now where I, maybe it's not unshakable faith, but it would take a lot to shake it, right?
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
even if there was some kind of drama and controversy or whatever, I think I'd be hard pressed because I haven't found anything else like this, right?
Right. Well, and that's the interesting thing is that like there have been controversies, right? Like
Of
with
course.
teachers and whatnot, and because people are people, right? And so that happens, but like the actual teachings, right? Like I have yet to find something that I'm like, nah, like that doesn't pan out when I really look at it. Um, and and so yeah, I think you're right that it's like for me too, it's gotten to that point where it's like, no, the Dharma really like it's it. Um,
I got nowhere else to go, you
I got
know?
no, yeah, exactly. I got
Like I
nowhere else
really
to
don't,
go.
I don't
Yeah.
have, there's no other thing, there's nothing better out there. I've tried many things.
Yeah.
I have yet to discover anything better than this. And there is, like I was saying at the outset of the show, there is a little me, my little misperceived self, my little ego that does in fact sometimes cry and
Hmm.
whine. And sometimes it gets mad and throws little hissy fits, doesn't like this trajectory, right? All of that. And I have to remind that little Daniel, be like, hey man, none of this is gonna kill you. You're still gonna be here. You still have a role. It's okay. We're just trying to get clear on reality as it is. It's
Right.
okay. No threat.
Right. Right. Yeah, so it really is just about looking at the evidence, right? Because my little self in there, right, where I've got that little misperceived self that's like, but don't you still want to do drugs? Like, come on,
Yeah,
or
right,
like, don't you still want to do such and such and such? And like, wouldn't that be more fun? And like, don't you want to have fun? And like, what is this life about? Like, right? Like
right,
have some fun.
right.
And when so like I have to calm that down and say, okay, let's look at the evidence, right? What was life like when I was pursuing those things, when that was my realm, right? All of that like internal craving was out in front of me all the time. Like that was miserable. I was just totally miserable. And so yeah, this, training is not flashy like an acid trip, right? but what it is that it's stable, it's true,
Yeah.
it's like and the experience of when I do have those moments where I feel just so kind of connected and blissfully present, right, with reality as it is. What's better than that? I don't need hallucinations, right? Just I don't. And what is a hallucination anyway, right? It
Hallucinating
doesn't.
is what got us here.
Right, exactly,
It's sort of
exactly.
like I love this. I remember coming across a discussion between Chogyam Trungpa and one of his students, where Trungpa was talking about essentially this sort of self that describing it sort of like a monkey that gets caged. Like it was wild and free, just swinging along, but somehow it gets caged and it's like locked up in this room and it's banging its head against the wall. It wants to
Mm,
be free, but it doesn't know how it got there and whatever. So he's telling this story. And at the end of the story, one of the students said, uh, well, Rinpoche, what would happen if the monkey just took a little bit of acid?
mm,
Wouldn't it be able
mhm.
to see more, maybe see things a little bit more clearly? And Trungpa said, the monkey has already taken the acid. Like
Yeah,
that the prison was a hallucination,
yeah,
right?
right,
So we don't
right.
need more hallucinating.
We don't. No, we need clarity. We need clarity. And yeah, I mean, I think that's what this, faith is all about, is recognizing the clarity of the Dharma, and of our teachers. This really is the path. This is the path for freedom and liberation. Nothing else.
Yeah, we're not even trying to sell you on it. Just try it
Yeah,
out.
just
Start
try it
where you
out.
are. See what you got,
Yeah.
Try the first thing, see if it works.
Yeah, nothing else has worked for me.
That's exactly it.
Yeah,
It's sort
yeah,
of a hopeless situation, isn't it?
it is. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that is one thing that I love about Dharma too, is like that kind of refrain that comes up of like beyond hope and fear,
that's right.
right? Where that's kind of the training, is we're training beyond hope and fear. And I think so much of the faith of conviction, like the faith of blind faith, is hope, right? It's about like, yeah, exactly what you're saying. Like if I just believe enough, then I will be saved, I'll be free. Um, and then there's like the fear aspect, which is also not based in reality, because there
Right.
is a path, right?
Yeah.
And so that beyond hope and fear, that is this grounded kind of like coming back to reality, that we can, yeah, really have faith in our experience.
Beyond hope and fear. Gate, gate.
Gate gate. Daniel, this has been fun.
It has been. Thank you.
Yeah. Are you feeling more faith
Um,
from, as we were saying, let's cultivate faith over the
yeah,
course of our conversation.
I have greater faith in faith.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, and talking about it, I think like we were saying, kind of looking it over helps me a
Let's
lot.
examine this. Yeah, it's super helpful, and I
Develop.
really appreciate it, Jack.
Me too.
I want to approach the development of faith in the empirical way that you do.
And hey, I try and do that. I can't say I do it all the time. I've certainly gone the blind faith route a
All right.
number of
Well,
times, so.
when I grow up, I want to be like you.
Well, thanks, Daniel. I appreciate you. Thanks for keeping me balanced.
Right back at you.
All right. Take care, everybody. Make a donation if you can. We'd appreciate it. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.